But before we go into politics, I would really love to just go over the Strictly thing because I thought you were absolutely fantastic.
Oh, so
on
did
that.
I.
Yeah. Girl
Did you
power.
enjoy it?
Oh, yes. I mean, because it was a complete release from responsibility because I did it within a couple of months of leaving Parliament. Everything I did when I was a politician could affect somebody for good or ill, from the way I voted to the legislation I passed to whatever way I handled a constituency case, whatever it was. When I was doing Strictly, other than Anton Shins, there was nothing I could affect for ill, absolutely nothing. So it was a complete absence of any responsibility. I knew I couldn't dance. Anton discovered that in the first 5 minutes or so. And so we decided there and then that we would do comedy. And that's what we did. And it was huge fun. And there was no pressure on me at all because I wasn't competing. I was
But that
just
must have been
enjoying
quite
myself.
a tonic for you to be in a completely
Oh,
different...
it was. I mean, it was absolutely terrific. And I enjoyed it hugely. Just as years after that, I did Big Brother. Now, all my life I'd said, I'm not doing Big Brother. You pay me £1 million, I won't be doing Big Brother. And then my agent rang up and he said, now, I'm going to say 2 words and I don't want an explosion. And I said, if you're going to say Big Brother, I guarantee an explosion. He said, well, just listen. And then he explained that they were doing a special programme, which they wanted to call Big Sister, but the channel wouldn't let them. But they were celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage. It was 2018. It was 100 years after the vote for women. And so they wanted a very special sort of one in which, for a few days there were only women in the house. The men sort of came along later. I'm very relieved I was to see them too. They came along later. And there were debates and things about issues. And it was not the standard sort of Big Brother. But I said to my agent, I said, oh, come on, where's the guarantee that they stick to that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, look, if you don't like it, you're not in the jungle. You're
go.
not in Australia, you're in Elstree. You just walk out.
Yeah.
And the whole production team apparently thought I would walk out within sort of about the first week. I think I shared that view. But I became the runner-up. I stuck it out for a month.
Wow.
Brilliant.
And enjoy is the wrong word. I can't claim to have enjoyed Big Brother, but I was glad that I had done it at the end of it.
So who was in it with you?
Who was in it with me? Amanda Barry,
the
actress, John Barnes, the footballer.
Yep.
Somebody called, Rachel Johnson, of course, the journalist, she was there. Somebody called Jess Impiazzi, who was a glamour model. And India Willoughby.
Oh.
And we just the usual old mix.
Because I think when Jim did Big Brother, he had a very unlikely bond in his house with Dappy, which was one of the... he was a rapper.
Really?
And it was the most unlikely friendship. But Jim kind of took him under his wing a little bit and he'd sort of become a bit of a father figure to him in the house. Was there anyone in the house that you kind of bonded with that you didn't think you would?
I got on best with Rachel Johnson. I mean, that was an obvious one.
Yeah.
And with Amanda. But I became the honorary grandmother, because she had a real one. But I became the honorary grandmother of Ashley James. And in fact, we met a couple of times for dinner after the thing was over.
Did you have an interest in politics when you were at school?
In my teens, I developed a very strong interest in politics. I mean, in my teens, I would have told you I wanted to be a politician.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But how did that start? What inspired you?
Well, I think a lot of it was to do with the fact that it was the height of the Cold War at the time. And the world was divided into 2 very sharp, conflicting political ideologies. It was capitalism versus communism.
Yeah.
And in Western democracies, that translated into capitalism versus socialism or it's in most countries, rather than communism. But the difference between the two, it was huge. You never had anybody on a doorstep saying to you, it wouldn't make any difference, it doesn't matter who wins. You knew it mattered. Everything was going to be very different. So my generation tended, therefore, to be very engaged. And you were on one side or you were on the other.
Yeah.
But what you were not likely to be was... sort of not caring about it in the middle.
So how did you get your foot in the door then initially?
Well, what you do is you apply for seats.
Okay.
And you can apply for any seat you like. The reality is, or the reality was in those days, that your first seat was likely to be absolutely hopeless. It was likely to be rock solid Labour.
Yeah.
And ditto for the Labour first ones, it tended to be rock solid Conservative, and that was how you cut your teeth, and they saw if you could run a campaign and you know, all the rest of it. And then, so I fought Burnley in Lancashire, and then I fought Dr. David Owen down in Devonport. Now, David Owen was a big name in those days. And then after that, I got Maidstone, which I represented from 1987 until 2010.
So obviously, sort of fast forwarding a bit, because now you've took a big leap and you've left the Conservative Party. And
rather.
And no, really, I mean, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, because you don't. No.
I was a member of the Tory party for 55 years. I mean, I joined as a young Conservative when I was 16, didn't even have the vote. It was 21 in those days. Didn't even have the vote for 5 years. But I joined when I was 16, and then I left, largely driven out by Theresa May's antics over Brexit. But the Conservative parties in general, their antics over Brexit. And I joined the Brexit Party, and I mean, if you told me, even, you know, in, say, January or February 2019, if you'd said to me, Anne, you're going to leave the Conservatives, you're going to join the Brexit Party, and you're going to be a Brexit Party MEP over in Brussels and Strasbourg, I would have roared with laughter, and I would have said, look, lie down and have an aspirin. You know, that ain't going to happen.
But that's the same as you going on to Strictly, though. It's the least likely thing that you thought you would do.
So I may say I think I was slightly more confident of Strictly than I ever was back going to Brussels. But so anyway, it happened, and I stood and I won. And then when Brexit was finally done, in inverted commas, the Brexit Party became the Reform Party, and I didn't immediately join. And I spent a year politically homeless. I didn't see anything.
Politically homeless, I like that.
Didn't see anything worth doing with the Conservatives. I just couldn't see them getting their act together. But I'd held off joining Reform because I do not believe in proportional representation, and it's quite a big policy in Reform.
What does that mean?
Well, hang on, I'll come to it. Just let me finish this bit. Okay. So that's what I'm always saying that to interviewers. Let me finish.
Sorry.
I didn't believe in proportional representation. But Nigel said to me in the end, he said, well, look, he said, you know, it's a constitutional issue. It's going to be a free vote. You do not have to sign up to a 3-line whip on proportional representation. What does it mean? We have a system in this country called first past the post, whereby the person who gets the most votes in a constituency wins.
Yeah.
Proportional representation is when you redistribute the votes proportionately. So if you've got over 50%, which I quite often had in Maidstone, that's fine, you're home and dry. But if, say, you've got 48%, then the votes coming in behind you are also counted. And that is called proportional representation, and it ends up with endless coalitions because nobody ever wins outright. So I absolutely hate it. I mean, I think you need a clear majority and a government that can actually govern if it feels that way. And so I'm not in favour of proportional representation.
I mean, I find it fascinating. As I was just saying to you, I think, you know, there's been so much change over the last few years, and I come from a very conservative background, and a lot of my family are questioning big time what's going on, and they feel very let down and very disappointed.
Well, so they should. So they should. I mean, considering the majority that Boris Johnson got in with, for example. I mean, you know, Theresa May, to be fair, didn't have that big a majority, but Boris did. Boris had a huge majority. And they couldn't have made a bigger mess if they'd set out to.
No.
Yeah, they really couldn't.
Agree.
And I think what happened last time a lot was people were thinking, well, either they didn't want the Conservatives to get in, so if they voted Reform, they risk that, or they didn't want Labour to get in, and if they voted Reform, they might risk that. This time, I think people understand if you vote Reform, you get Reform.
Yeah.
Because we got 5 MPs, and you know we're at the top of the polls now.
I know.
And
yeah,
so
it's amazing.
I think the message has gone home. Actually, no, you won't get the other party. You'll get reform if you vote reform.
I think with reform, it's people need to understand exactly
what it is,
and what they're about.
I don't know why people think they're against, you know, they are racist. I don't understand where that comes from.
It isn't racist. It's because we believe in the firm control of immigration.
Yeah.
And that is often portrayed as racist. Now, in fact, all the parties sign up to some sort of control over immigration. They don't actually deliver it, but they sign up to it. So it is a very ignorant accusation. But it isn't just Conservatives who are coming to us. We're getting Labour people now on quite a scale.
Really?
Yeah. It's
That's
your
interesting.
what used to be described as the working class Labour vote, which I always think is a very patronising expression, but it's one that used to be used quite widely. They were the people who got Thatcher in, because she appealed to them as well as to the Conservative.
Who would you predict to be our next Prime Minister?
Nigel Farage.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I think so.
I was sitting next to him at Good Morning Britain the other day, and he left his phone on the table, and I thought, I wonder if I looked in that could ring Donald
I'm sure
Trump.
it would have a password.
No, but you know what I mean? You see
Is
it,
that
you
a role?
think,
Yeah, is that a role that you would have liked to when you were
Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course it is. Very, very few people who go into politics, wouldn't really like to be Prime Minister. I mean, of course we would.
Yeah.
but you're more famous than a Prime Minister.
I don't know about that.
And
but
more current.
I think you'd be great Prime Minister.